Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever in the world you're calling in from. Thanks for being here this Saturday for the Camp Symposium, and thanks for joining our breakout session, Resilience Through Acculturation. My name is KJ. I am Burning Man Project's Learning Manager in our education program. We focus year-round on sharing the culture of Burning Man, and we are really excited to be supporting the Camp Symposium this year and producing and facilitating this session. I'm going to do a quick overview of how this session is going to go, and then just set a few agreements that we would like for everyone to sit in and abide by. And we're going to have a great, quick hour and 15-minute panel. We're excited. So yes, this is a panel discussion on resilience through acculturation. We've got 3 amazing theme camp organizer experts who are here to talk about their acculturation. You know, what is a burner? How do we learn to live the principles of Burning Man, especially when, you know, things get tight and things get tough in Black Rock City? And we want to talk about how camp leads can help bring their new burners along into a lived experience of our culture. So we are excited to talk with these camp organizers about how they became burners, how they were acculturated, and how they support new campers. We're going to have our panelists introduce themselves. We're going to have a discussion for about 45, 50 minutes of the thing. And then we are going to leave time at the end for a Q&A portion for all of our participants, all of our audience, to ask questions if you'd like. So if you do have questions that come up, our request is that you can use the chat to drop any questions you have in there. Our chat moderator will be watching the chat throughout, and then she can queue us up the list of questions when we get to the Q&A portion. Awesome. So just a couple of agreements that we would like to set the container of this space that we are entering into together. This is an invitation for all of us to come into the space with what we have, what we know, what we've experienced, to kind of be courageous and to trust each other in what we have to share. And if you have a chance to speak, we ask that you speak from your own experience and that you also respect the privacy of what other people are sharing into the space. We ask that everyone listen openly, listen to what other folks have to say and have to share. And finally, we do ask that you avoid chatting and what cross-talking we call it, you know, using the chat to have side conversations or to maybe distract yourself or others into all of the great information, right? We know that it's a possibility. We are inviting you to put questions into the chat, but if you can, just stay present with us in the conversation and avoid chit-chatting extensively in the chat box, and then we'll get to have some interactivity during the Q&A portion. We are also going to be having some interactivity for our audience throughout the session. We'll be asking you some questions, polling you a couple of times. So hopefully we will get a little break in the talking head action. All right. So now I would like to turn it over to our panelists. I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves. We have 3 amazing panelists joining us. So I'm going to ask each of them to share their name, the camp that they are representing, the number of years they've been burning, and then I'd like to invite them to answer this question. How did you arrive in this culture, and how were you brought along? How were you acculturated as a burner? All right. Thank you very much. I'm just going to go down the row of what I'm looking at here. Mama Dynamite, I would love to hand the talking stick to you.
Great. Thank you so much, KJ. Again, Mama Dynamite, Dr. Mama Dynamite, I like to call myself. I am a co-lead for a new camp called Solid City. We're a New York City theme-based camp, mostly because most of our campers are from the New York area or the East Coast. I am a 2-time burner. Tried a few times, couple of false starts, finally made it to the dust in 2022. I was acculturated through my amazing older daughter, Scout, who went in 2015, had an amazing experience, told me about it. I did some research, some videos, and some other stuff. Fell in love with this crazy, amazing, oh my God, can you believe it actually happens out there type of world, and just jumped in head first. A lot of my acculturation manifested through conversations, other resources like the MPOC in neighborhood, campfire talks, actually Burning Man.org. The Jackrabbit Speaks was a valuable resource, and then their survival guide. And just talking to people and just checking out YouTube videos. I really love The Most Unusual City. I actually always ask people to watch it. If you can get into that, then this is the place for you. So I'm absolutely excited. I jumped in head first, and there's like no looking back now.
Oh, I love that. I think one of the my favorite aspects of your story is that you were brought in by your daughter. That warms my heart. I'm raising a young kid in this culture. My son is 4. So I just love that you get to share it with your family. Thanks, Mama Dynamite. Thanks for being here. Next, Kate, can you introduce yourself? Welcome.
Hi. Thank you so much. I'm so delighted to be here, everyone. My name is Kate Bitney. I am with Feed the Artists, and so we are a camp of 85 amazing souls who come together from across the world to provide food as an art form. We come out during Build Week to set up all of our infrastructure and go out and feed the incredible artists who are making Black Rock City the home that we all have for 1 or more weeks of the year. So let's see, I've been burning since 2015. I haven't been with FTA, often call ourselves FTA, that entire time. But yeah, burning since 2015, only taking off 2017, and then pandemic years didn't go at that time because it wasn't on. I think in terms of how I arrived at this culture, I feel like there's kind of 2 components to it. There's the I currently live in the Seattle area, and I had moved out here a number of years ago and just hadn't quite found my niche yet, hadn't found my group, was having a hard time getting to know people. Made one friend, and she said, you should come to this Burning Man event with me. I'm like, Burning Man? What? I think I've heard of that. What is that? Decided to go, and just was introduced to the local burner community here, who at that time, maybe they still do, I'm not as involved in the local community now, but they have weekly potlucks, and just got to know, like, it was the community I never even knew I needed. Like, they were people that were open, they were people that were friendly, they were people that like followed through. If you asked if you wanted to have dinner, there were folks that just were curious and non-judgmental, and it was truly such a wonderful, wonderful experience. I just kept going back and back and back, and then came on to Black Rock City. That was in early 2015, and then went to Black Rock City that year. And loved it. Had a few different experiences with different camps before coming to FTA. Not always smooth, as Black Rock City never will be always seamless, but learned something every time I went, especially about myself and kind of how I wanted to show up and participate. And I love that I get to live that throughout the year and share that with others too. Yeah, I think a little bit about me.
Awesome. Thank you, Kate. I love what your camp does. Feed the Artists is an amazing crew, and we're so excited to have a co-lead, a co-camper of yours with us. Yurian, could you please introduce yourself? Thank you.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Yurian Timmer, and along with Kate, I'm the lead at Feed the Artists. Been burning. This will be my 6th burn. And, Feed the Artists was founded in 2007, really kind of brought food as an art form to the playa. And our main mission is to literally feed the artists during Build Week. And what we do, now we feed them kind of all day, and we just kind of rove around the playa, going by art installations that we can see are being built. And we just say, hey, you guys hungry? And we are bringing the food. And oftentimes, like at 9 p.m. after we've had our family meal at camp, we bring a whole convoy out. We bring like 50 people out. We get to borrow a vintage military transport vehicle that a couple of nurses own at Burning Man. And we just drive around and we bring gourmet food, and we've heard many stories of really kind of giving artists that extra sort of push to keep building. But how did I get there? I started going in 2017. It was completely sort of coincidental. I was in a stage in my life where I needed to get a shock to the system. I've kind of grown up in a very linear left brain way, and I needed some non-linearity, which of course, if there's any place that does that, it's Burning Man. And I met a fellow at a yoga retreat. We have a common yoga teacher, and we just kind of got to talking about it. He said, well, I camped with this group called Feed the Artist last year. Maybe I can introduce you to Perry. And so the way we work is you have to get sponsored. And that just kind of led from one conversation to the next. And then I got interviewed and vetted by the then lead Colonel Angus, who is also the founder of Feed the Artist. And we were like, hell, just let's try it. So I recruited my partner, and we went, and obviously it was exactly the experience that we probably have all had, at least as our first burn. And then in the years that followed, now I take my kids or my kids take me, I guess. So I have a son and a daughter, 24 and 27, and they're like more veteran burners than I am now. So it is a family affair now.
Thank you all to our panelists. Thank you for introducing yourselves. I just love to hear these stories of family and community being born. I think all of us here have, a similar experience. That's what we're doing here. And so much of this is rooted in our experience in camp, who we live with, who we come in with, and who we play with. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you all today. Next, we wanted to ask our participants a little bit about themselves, our attendees. We've heard from our panelists, their history, what camp they're representing, how long they've been burning. I can tell you I've been burning since 2001. And at these days, I camp in a staff camp. I'm part of heavy equipment camp 530 in Esplanade. You might see all the machines there. My 4-year-old loves it. Sometimes a scary place to camp with a 4-year-old, but he loves it. But we would love to know from you all, how long have you been burning? How many years have you been going to Burning Man? We're going to do what's called a word fall. So I'm going to say go, and you're going to go into the chat and you're going to drop in the number of years that you've been attending Black Rock City, and it's going to fall into the chat like a word fall. And we're going to just see, the scope of years. Maybe someone can crunch it really quick and tell us, together we have 200 years of play time. No, we probably won't do that. All right. So to our audience, how many years have you been going to Black Rock City? Please drop your answer in the chat now. Woo, 22, 10, love it. 1, beautiful, welcome. 18, 5, yeah, spread across. Yeah, I know a lot of folks have that, right? Spread over a period of years. 12, 9, 8, 2. I think we could probably be over 100. That'd be pretty sweet. Awesome. Thanks, y'all. As a wide range, I see a lot of folks weighing in with 1, 2 years. That's wonderful. See a lot of folks here with double digits, a breadth of experience and we're all still learning. We all still have so much to learn. I like to consider myself post-jaded. Like we came back full around. We know there's plenty still to learn, plenty to still be put in awe of. Awesome. Thanks, y'all. Traveling from Texas for almost a decade. Yep. That would have been a cool question also. Where in the world? Awesome. Thank you all so much. It's nice to get a little taste. Cool. So let us dive right in. Let's have a chat. So Mama Dynamite, Yuri and Kate, thank you for being here. The first thing I want to ask you all a little bit about is best practices. I'd love to know, as camp leads, what are you doing now that's working for you as camp leads as far as bringing your campers in? What practices do you have to help your new folks land? And I don't know, I can rotate it. Kate, why don't you start us off?
Okay, sure. We have a number of things. I would say, as Urian mentioned in his intro, every camper has a vetting call to make sure that we're a good mutual fit. Our majority of referrals at FTA come from existing campers. So when you refer to someone to FTA, you become their sponsor as well. So you, in addition to camp leadership, you help that person acclimate, you help them learn the culture. They'll have a trusted person on playa to go to if something kicks up or happens and needs help. And as sponsor, you're also responsible for that person if things hit the fan and kind of go south. I think, there's been examples of that over the year. I can think of one in 2022 where somebody went a little too hard, too fast. And I went to them when they were in a state of mind to, have a direct conversation about that. And then also went to their referral source and said, hey, your friend is having a tough time. This is what happened. Can you please go and support them? Because I think they need someone maybe a little that would be familiar. It might be helpful. So person turned it around. They're a great camper. We're then too. But it's really just helped, I think, on and off Playa to make sure that folks have a good acculturation practice. Great intro. I think a couple other things that come to mind are we at FTA, we're a very diverse camp. We have folks from all around the world, and about 30% of the folks in our camp speak Portuguese as a first language. Oh. So we send out all communications in both English and Portuguese, making sure that we're inclusive and welcoming, and also too, it doesn't work to acculturate someone in English if they don't speak English. It's not fair to put that labor on them. That's part of our job as TCOs to have that labor be welcoming, put that in. So we have camp language ambassadors to help with that on Playa, make sure that the main language is spoken. We can just check in with people, grab some support if needed. And then I think the last piece I would say is, we really set clear expectations. We're a work hard, play hard camp, I think, and grace is given, right? Nobody wants to do a bad job or not show up as their best self. And, things happen. The Playa gets exciting and something pops up and we want to go there, or we have a tough day. And that's where we really work together to make sure we're supporting each other, honoring and respecting people enough to share direct feedback with them, receiving it in turn as well as TCOs too. We always solicit feedback on Playa and do an anonymous camp survey after as well to make sure that we take feedback as a leadership team and implement the suggestions the following year.
Oh man, those were so many great suggestions. I am glad we're recording this for posterity. A few things I heard that I just love is that, first of all, that it's someone's responsibility, right? You can refer your friend and be like, I really want so-and-so to camp with me. Well, okay, you're on board now. You're part of this process. You're not just going to turn your person into the wild, especially if they've never been to Black Rock City before. I love the effort that you're putting in to have to get over a language barrier, to make sure you're inclusive to a real global audience. We see ourselves as a global community. We have burners all over the world. We have folks who come to Black Rock City from all over the world, and then we have folks who maybe never come to Northern Nevada, but they're burning in their own countries. And it's a huge topic in our department of how can we help the culture transcend languages, national barriers, in ways that are respectful and inclusive. And I love the part about welcoming and incorporating feedback. I was a camp lead once, and it's hard sometimes to get that feedback. Yeah. But if you don't do anything with it, then you're just, the group's probably not gonna, survive long unless you can really work together in that way. Thank you so much, Kate. Mama Dynamite, I would love to hear from you about, what is Solid City doing that's working well?
Thank you so much, KJ. We're actually really working on ways of how we can grow our camp and give it some real good thought, doing inventory checks and sort of that. We just debuted in 2023, so we're still a relatively very new camp, just trying to figure out what the next step look like so that we don't become a one and done and that's kind of it and just kind of burn away into, fade into memory. So one of the things that we did was we incorporated one of the resources that Level mentioned, hubs, Humans United for Better Sustainability, and that really works to maximize some of your needed resources for survival, like potable water. What are you going to do with the gray water tank? Getting a really good build and strike team, resources and things like that. So you could also have a good plan for when you arrive to when you leave is very important, because your build team is equally, if not critically important, as your last team out, your strike team. So the first one in to the last one out are all critical components. And also one of the things I found, along with what Kate was mentioning was having somebody responsible, especially if you're bringing in a new person, because we're a family center type camp. Like, I mean, not only did my daughter bring me in, but I learned how to camp with like my son, my other daughter, their friends, spouses. We even had kids, people with special needs. So you learned how to blend all of that into like one family kind of community. But also like Kate mentioned, if you have somebody that's getting a little bit off, it also helps to be responsible. Like, you know, you check your friend and somebody's still alive, they're okay, where'd they go? Just keeping tabs on each other helps us to be accountable, you know, for each other as a camp, because we are still considered like a family. But I also, one of the most critical things I think was really helpful was having our burners become involved in other things, not just come to play and ply on the dust. We had someone that was with EMS, so we learned like safety and things and how to hydrate and don't let this happen, don't let that happen. We had someone join Earth Guardians, came back with a wealth of information to put kind of like a understanding and meaning behind some of the madness that we say, like, oh, don't let your chips fly and don't spill your beer and oh no, don't leave the fuel over there. All those important things that you need for survival, being sustainable, like why we were a green camp, you know, why we were really trying hard to do that. You know, a lot of that started to come into people's minds, especially new burners, and, you know, really solidify those that had been there before. So all of those important qualities of how to build your camp into a city, be part of the city, get involved, all of those were the critical components that that we did and that we learned as some of our really best practices.
KJ, you muted.
I was trying to be responsible. I was being too responsible. I love what you're saying and how, you know, both of these camps, that it's really rooted in the community, right? Like, yes, radical self-reliance is a thing, but also communal effort, right? That we are here to take care of each other and help each other take better care of ourselves. Mom Dynamite, I love how your people like spread out and got different kinds of knowledge, right? From the Earth Guardians, from the strike team, you know, like, you know, how to do the different components of, you know, like you said, from the first person into the last person out. And yeah, I just love that it's like such a family affair. Thank you so much. The next question I'd love to ask all of you, you know, we're talking about what works. What can you share anything that, you know, that didn't work? Like, especially when you were a new burner, just a burner, you weren't a theme camp organizer yet, you were coming along, you know, maybe what are some things that maybe didn't work to acculturate you or, you know, folks that you were coming in with, especially with what you know now. Yurian, do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, you know, we're fortunate enough, Kate and I, that we're part of a camp that has been around for a long time, and it's always been really well run. You know, and we tend to have a mix of, let's say, 2/3 veterans, 1/3 newcomers, and of course the new blood is great. Like, it really creates a lot of, you know, energy and enthusiasm, but especially us as a food camp, you know, we run a full commercial kitchen, and we're probably making 5,000 meals over that 2-week period. Having the institutional knowledge of, you know, having, you know, chefs in the kitchen. I mean, obviously volunteer chefs. Everyone is a volunteer, but to know how the operations work, to have, you know, veterans in charge of distro and, you know, and all the kind of operational things, is something we're very blessed with, that we've always had that. And so we try to obviously maintain that. And so when I came in, when Kate came in, that was already sort of established. But and part of, you know, coming to Burning Man for the first time is kind of being a little lost, right? Like, you know, like you want to be acculturated, but you don't want to be coddled. Like, you need to discover this stuff, right? So but, you know, and we got some good guidance. Like, you don't want to be the camp rat or the camp martyr who like never leaves, and you're always like, oh, like I need to do this. Like, nobody likes this people, right? So our veterans would just push us, like, go and explore. Like, your shift is over in the kitchen. Like, we all do kitchen shifts at Feed the Artist. So they're not necessarily things that weren't, you know, done well, but that we've tried to build on. And so having that core group of veterans is essential, especially for our camp. we start the acculturation early, which was always done as well, even before we were part of the leadership. So, like, I write a state of the camp email to the entire Feed the Artist community, whether they're camping with us this year or not. Usually, like the 1st of January, and we are radically transparent. Like, we don't want to be this opaque thing where nobody really knows what's going on. So we are radically transparent in our finances, like to the penny. People know where their camp dues are being spent and how, and what we're doing, what we're trying to do different, what we're trying to do the same. Obviously, we weave everything into the 10 principles. And as the year progresses, both Kate and myself are kind of taking turns writing emails to the community as we're vetting members and as we're getting people ready, especially the virgins, of course, but even the veterans, do need to be reminded sometimes. And
Absolutely.
And so we will get pretty specific. Like, as we get into, let's say, July, we'll have sort of, not like the 10 commandments, but it'll be sort of, we expect you to understand that this is how we expect you, to conduct yourself in camp, what we expect of you, what you're getting in return. And so we want to have as few open questions as possible, because as Kate can attest, and probably all of you can, it only takes a few people who really don't get it to kind of create a lot of work for the camp leads. And so as much as we can do to get people ready and acculturated, the better off we are. And for instance, like in 2019, we onboarded a bunch of people very late in the season, and they were great, but we could tell that they had not been acculturated as much as the others do, who are already signed up now and who are getting those email blasts as early as February. And so we noticed the difference in that.
Thank you so much. I heard so many great tips in there, and you're right. Like, we all have to be free to make some mistakes, right? Like the fine line between acculturating and maybe coddling, or not letting someone have that experience of learning firsthand. Yeah, it sounds like a really established system there. I think that, for me, my first year we were a bunch of party kids. We were, ravers, and we had 2 people in our camp who had been one time before. And I think we would have died without the one person who knew actually how to build a little bit of shade. Because we were just there to party. We didn't even know, it was like a very steep learning curve. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, like how to balance like getting all that information out, and that there's a curve, right? Like, you might be at a disadvantage if you're coming in July instead of February. Just one more question before we move on from the topic of best practices. I would just love to know, from our 2 camps, from Solid City and from Feed the Artists, what do you think makes your, new burners, your folks, want to come back again and camp with you? Mama Dynamite, what do you think makes people want to come back to Solid City?
Oh, I think it's the fact that we show people, we really exemplify how you could have a really great burn with your family. Like, who brings their mother, who comes with their kids, but we can really show how, we're a great fun family, but we really show how you can do it, like how you can really balance the private time and the fun time all together in a really funky, cool kind of way. Like, we had kids, we had a child with us. Like, how do you do that? What concerns do you have? So we really showed how everyone there, no matter if they had special needs that we had, some people had some accessibility issues, maybe some limited resources, but we really showed how you can do it and really have fun and be organized and not, overbearing. Like, I wasn't like the mom to everybody, but just how to be prepared. And we really show people how, you lead by example. So this is a way that you can balance so many, so much diversity in a really fun, cool place, and really give others the experience and opportunity to really see what Burning Man is about, so I think that's one thing that we do really, really well in a really cool, kind of stylish, kind of crazy way.
Awesome. I want to come visit you this year. I've been to Feed the Artists years ago, but I'm gonna have to come visit Solid City and Feed the Artists again. All right. Well, Kate, you're in. What do you think? You have a little more of an established camp. You've been around for, it sounds like, over a decade, well over a decade.
Yeah.
What do you think makes your new campers want to come back again and be part of Feed the Artists?
I think a few things. Food. I mean, everybody loves food, and it brings people together, and food transcends culture, and we all need to eat. It's just all the things about food, preparing it together, like supporting the broader community as part of that, and then getting to know each other through that preparation, I think is a big piece. And just interacting with the broader community as we share our gift with the playa. I think diversity, age, gender, race, interest, language, all the things. My dad comes to Burning Man as well. He camps with FTA. So I love that all three of us leads here today camp with our family members. So we have a huge,
Awesome.
diverse range of folks that camp. I think our low to really no tolerance for drama, like being a jerk isn't acceptable. We don't play that. And you will be not invited to come back if you're a jerk. And refuse to no longer be a jerk. And then again, the clear expectations piece too, I think, and just as Mama Dynamite already mentioned, like being organized and helping get things set up in advance so we can all have a good time. Yeah.
Awesome.
I would just add to that, what makes all of this come back, at least, obviously to Burning Man, but especially to Feed the Artists, is that we're about two things. We're about service and we're about community, right? So, we have a mission. Obviously, we all want to have fun, and we all do. But our mission is to feed the artists, especially during Build Week, and then during Burn Week, we bring everyone to our camp. We do late night food court where the zombies come to us, when they're on their way to Playa Alchemist or some other sound camp. But the sense of mission, I think, kind of bonds people, and then the fact that we're working in the kitchen to execute on that mission. So we have 85 campers. Everyone has to do 4 shifts, which is not too bad. But we're working alongside really like professional chefs, who are volunteering their time to come burn with us and stay and be at our camp. And that sense of tight-knit community, like we have family meals that we cook ourselves and then bring it out to the community, so that the execution of the mission creates a very tight bond in the community where, as Kate said, literally from all walks of life, all different countries, and we're all kind of equal side by side, chopping onions or dicing carrots or whatever it is, and that's a real good bonding experience. So I think that's why people come back.
Oh, dicing onions in the desert. That could be its own sub camp. That could be its own focus theme camp. Whew. Work it out. Catharsis, right? Like, all right. We're going to move on from this topic, but first we want to go back to our audience and ask you all a question. We've just talked about, what these camp organizers feel brings people back again and again to their camp. So we'd love to know from y'all. We're going to launch a poll. And the question is yes or no. Did you return to the same camp after your first year? So our amazing tech moderator, Vegas Queen, is going to launch it, and let's just take a moment to vote, see what comes in, and then after just a minute here, Vegas Queen will show us those results. Thanks for participating. Cool. Oh man, I'm just thinking about chopping onions in the desert, and I'm like, why? Oh my. All right. Well, that's a really close split. Yes, 56, no, 44. All right. I returned with the same camp for about 3 or 4 years in a row before we all scattered. I was a yes. All right, that's cool. That's cool. Sometimes we, just interesting to see. All right, thanks, y'all. Let's move on to the topic of advice. As camp organizers, experienced camp organizers, what advice would you give first-time camp leads that you wish you had like that you wish you had known? Mama Dynamite, why don't you start us off?
Okay, thanks, KJ. I cannot reiterate the importance of vetting. It's really important, we had a solid set of questions and things that we did, but I wish I did a little more work on understanding people's camp history, for the no's that we just did the poll, why didn't you go back to your camp, or were you not invited back to your camp? That's a stark difference, whether you're exploring or you got put out or you got put to orphan camp or whatever it is. Those are things that you really need to know. Also, what helps you to understand what roles or what kind of participation, that burner might have within your camp. Does their personality personality fit, your dynamics? Are they going to uphold the principles? Are they going to be a rule breaker? Those type things are important, to make sure that you maintain that kind of dynamics of your camp that you want. I also think it's very important to have pre-burn involvement, not just meetings, and I would even maximize your meetings so that you get more bang for your buck instead of having a bazillion meetings, number them so that you're getting the most, information rally that you can. But things like, helping, even just purchasing supplies, it kind of takes away that veil of unknown, like, okay, well, that's not mine, that belongs to the camp, so I really don't care about it. It can kind of take a little bit of that away if people are more invested. And you can build that investment by having them be intentional. They're participating in meetings. They see what it takes to get resources, materials, the logistics, the planning, the development, the art. It's so much that's involved when you're a camp versus if you're just open camping and you're just winging it by yourself. There's a lot of steps. So that, people, you can understand their skill set, can they really hold a tarp down? Do they know how to put something together? Or I'm gonna read every instructions detail by detail. I'm just gonna wing it. I just do it my own way. That could be the difference between having your shade structure stay up really well or fall apart in the first wind. So vetting is really important. And also tightening up your logistics team and you're building your strike. Know who's coming right away, who can get there on day one so that you're not building 8 days in a row, that kind of sort of thing. So the importance of vetting and also getting to know who you're going to be camping with. If you're going to have a get together, you're going to practice putting something together. Do you know how to turn that stove on or are we going to blow up? Stuff like that. So those are the important that,
advice.
Getting to know your burners ahead of time would do.
Awesome. Thanks, Mama Dynamite. Yeah, I love this point of like, you get in what you put out. And I have been a camp organizer and I've also been a camper. And I, when you don't know what's going on, when you don't know what's in the sauce, like if you can have a great time, but there's something about like being involved, owning a piece, like, delivering it for your people. Like that's really what makes the community and the family. Thank you. To my friends over there and Feed the Artists, as experienced campers, I'd love to kind of hone in a little bit on advice. What advice would you give your fellow camp organizers to avoid burnout, like theme camp organizer burnout? I burned out so hard, y'all, by my third year, my fourth year, I didn't want to be friends with my friends anymore, and, those years are behind me now, but like, how would you encourage your fellow TCOs to avoid burnout?
Yeah, I can start with that one. I mean, one of the obvious things is to really divide the tasks, right? Because we have a leadership team of 4, and then we have a broader working group. Obviously someone is in charge of L&T, someone, we have someone who's kind of does the electrical, and but in most cases, people will know Kate and myself going up to the event because we're the ones communicating the most, not entirely, but the most. So every time anyone has any question, guess who they're going to come to? And next thing you know, every 5 minutes there's a knock on the door of the RV or what have you. And this happened last year, it happened the year before, and it's very easy to get burnt out if you kind of take all this on yourself. So we have a distro person, we have our master of operations, we have so clearly delineating, okay, you have a problem like the power doesn't turn on, go see Adam. If you have a problem with the sink doesn't turn off, go see John. And so I think that's one way to kind of at least ease the burden, because it's very, very easy just to kind of become the martyr and say, okay, well, I've done all the planning, let me just go figure out this thing as well. And next thing you know, you're just working the whole time, and that's not exclusively why we're there.
Yeah, guilty. I was absolutely a martyr to my camp when I did it all those years ago. And I think that's a culture. And, it's kind of a known thing that we talk about in Burning Man culture, because we're all such doers, right? And we build a city and there's pride in that. But like, I'm going to die doing it. Like, there's so many folks who break their backs. And so many of us have probably, learned from experience about how to, what that costs us. Yeah.
Yeah. And you feel responsible, right? You're putting this thing together. I mean, I don't want to say we're curating experience because we're not. Everyone is co-curating it for themselves, but as a community. But you do feel like, okay, like this is on me. I got to figure this out, and you know, delegation is a good thing if you can do it. Not everyone's a good delegator, though.
Such a powerful skill, and I think probably those organizers and leads who last are the ones who are powerful at delegating and acknowledging, right? Taking the feedback, acknowledging the team. There's many factors there. Thank you all. Mama Dynamite, I'd love to ask you the next question. Maybe both of you, this is an important part of our culture. Snark, a very important part of our culture, right? We get through with some humor, with some sass, but like, how do you introduce the concept of snark in a sustainable way? Like, is it something that you see in your teams, and how do you get new burners to, what advice would you give to your new burners around like how to do snark?
I generally would treat it as a learning opportunity, but also being very respectful. We all going to vent. We're all going to get upset. We're all going to say things that sometimes we wish we hadn't. But if you keep like the 10 principles in mind of like the communal effort and participation and radical inclusion, and be tactful. And, sometimes I may go off and be, why did somebody do this? And why did this happen? But not generally directing at anybody. A lot of times we're mad at the act, not necessarily the person. You got to be mindful of the intent, but you can learn how to express your displeasure without being rude. You can still maintain a sense of being respectful. We all get mad when the wind knocks our tarp down, but we don't have to blame the person that maybe didn't tie it as effectively as you would do it. So I try to approach it as, okay, what went wrong? How can we do it better? We know the past 2 burns were extremely horrendous and difficult. Oh my God, praise everybody that made it and still want to come back, but even if some of the things that Solid City attempted to do weren't as great as we wanted to be, it wasn't like, okay, we're going to throw it all out and never, ever do it again. You learn from it. Okay, what can we do better? So I take all of that into even into everyday default world. Okay, what can I do better? How can I say that better? Was I as nice to that person? Let me go back and apologize. So as long as I can look at, okay, this is what went wrong, and that's why I'm really mad. That's what really upset me. So you have to learn how to get along with everybody. Not everybody's the same. Everybody's coming with all kinds of idiosyncrasies and difference in habits and so forth. But if we can explain why we feel and what went wrong, I think that opens the door to communication and dialogue. So maybe it won't happen again. And if it does, maybe you learn how to deal with it in a different or better way.
Thank you. Such great advice. Kate, what do you think? Is there a culture of snark in Feed the Artists?
I think, it goes back and forth a little bit. I was having a great conversation recently, or this week, with one of our co-leads and another camper, and we're talking about the difference between sarcasm and snark. And I love how what you outlined, Mama Dynamite, because like there's like being sarcastic, and then there's like teetering into being a jerk. And as you mentioned, like we're about hospitality, we're about inclusivity, we're about welcoming, and that's not okay at our camp, and hopefully anywhere. So I would say, in terms of snark, if it starts to teeter on that line of like, oh, okay, get to be a little bit of a jerk here, nip it in the bud, have a conversation, call someone in, but address it, because if it goes not addressed, that's when I feel like things can just like keep going up and up and up, and people sometimes take saying nothing as acceptance or approval. So definitely stepping up when it gets to be, and that's part of our role as a lead too, right? You have to have those sometimes uncomfortable conversations.
And it's a balancing act, right? I mean, as Mama Dynamite was saying about selecting members and and vetting them. I mean, obviously we're not recruiting for like a corporation. Like, it's Burning Man. We want people to kind of bring their own character, but at what point does it become an issue of management? Like managing a camp. Like one snarky person, it can become kind of poisonous, right? Like, and so, and we see this, and I think generally we have a good ethos in the camp, and being like a food camp, usually on 10 o'clock, so we're very visible. You'll have some a tourist come in, sort of just assuming they're going to get fed, and it's like so that it's easy to get snarky with them. But then if someone has a legitimate need, like, you don't want to get snarky with them, and so it is a very much a balancing act. But as Kate said, we're we're about hospitality, but we also have to manage our resources, right? There's only so much food. There's only so many people to cook the food. And so, like you have to manage sort of like how you deal with people coming into camp, but you want to be polite. And if someone wants to eat, but we're having our family meal, we just say, look, we're having our family meal, come back at 10 for late night food court. And there's ways of doing that, that are positive.
We only have a minute left in this topic, and then we've got one more topic before our Q&A, but I'd love to, this is an important question. I just love to hear the thoughts from these two camps. What do you think camps can do to practice radical inclusion, diversity, and equity in regards to new campers? Are there any practices your camp are implementing? And I love that we've already heard ways to be inclusive of different abilities and mobilities, different ages, and some people use power tools, some people don't, right? Some people can prepare a gourmet meal, some people can do great cleanup. So do you have any thoughts about ways camps can practice radical inclusion as far as bringing in their new campers?
I would say, I'll try to be quick. I think, again, feedback I think is really important, being open to asking for it as well as receiving it and then implementing it. Because if you don't do anything about what someone has shared with you, then it's just lip service and it's a disrespectful waste of everyone's time. So again, I think we talked a little bit about language, and I think scholarships, so making sure that folks of all means are able to participate. Burning Man is not inexpensive, so we have a scholarship program, but we have scholarships available at FTA to make sure that dues are not a burden because we're infrastructure heavy. And I think the last thing I would say is just have a camp that's reflective of more than one demographic. We all want to see, I think just as humans, people that we can relate to and perhaps see ourselves in, and that's about things like race and gender and sexual orientation and age and activities or careers. And I think that's an ongoing area for growth generally, including at FTA. But I think doing more and more of that and really implementing all these things has helped us to become more and more diverse across the years.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. From a established, longtime camp perspective, thank you very much. Mama Dynamite, what about in Solid City? You guys are a newer camp, family-based. Do you have any thoughts about this?
Absolutely. It was wonderful being a part of the MPOC and neighborhood. That was such a wonderful group to be a part of. They hold several open house events where you can get to see the camps that are part of the neighborhood. And also you can see burners that are looking for a camp. So, we strive to be a predominantly diverse POC camp. So, we have our numbers that we look for and what we try to achieve. We're not exclusive, but we do look to maintain those numbers because that's one of our goals. But other camps can do the same. People are always looking for, what camp can I join? I've never done this before. So that's an excellent way to get some new burners of color in your group if you want. And also maybe provide a sliding scale for your dues if you've got really high dues or something like that, because we all know it's not inexpensive. It's a very, financial, investment to come to Burning Man. So making it accessible for people of different income status would help. So if you were looking to make your camp diverse, those are some ways to achieve that if you put your focus and your goals in that.
Thank you both so much. Yeah, it's, the work of our community, certainly Burning Man Project, this is important work to us as an organization. And I love hearing you call it out that it really can start with you, that can start with the practices you put into place, how you see your role as leaders for your team, for your camp. Yeah. And then following through on those things. Thank you all. All right, we're done with this topic of advice, but we do want to hear one more time from our audience, one more poll. We'd love to know from y'all, yes, no, or somewhere in between. Do you feel that you got good advice from your camp leaders when you were a new burner? So I feel, thanks, Focus Queen. There's the poll. Jump in. Let us know what you think. I'm going to go with there. Oh, I love that. I'm just going to call out someone. Brett in the chat says, in their camp, if anyone in the camp meets the eligibility for STEP, which is the Secure Ticket Exchange program, even if they didn't get it, the camp dues are waived. It's a great way to do it. Love that. All right. Awesome. I'm heartened heartened to see that the majority of the answers here are yes, you were acculturated well, your people gave, low income. That makes more sense, Brett. Thank you for saying that. The low income ticket process. And sorry, I'm getting distracted, but great advice in the chat if you want to check that out. Love seeing that almost 60% of us do feel like they got good advice. I was in between. Like I said, we were a bunch of young party kids. It was mostly about having fun, and we really have one person to thank for keeping like 20 of us alive. So maybe we didn't get the best of us. We're still here, but maybe we didn't get the best advice in that instance. All right. Thanks all for sharing. One last question, one last topic, and then we're going to have a Q&A portion. I'd love to know what do you think still needs to be learned? So my first question in that regard is, what is one thing you think maybe is overlooked in new burner acculturation that you feel theme camp organizers should be aware of? Urian, I'll kick it over to you first. Is there anything you think is being overlooked to bring in new burners that camp organizers can focus on, be aware of?
I don't know if I would call it overlooked, but just to come back to the vetting, and maybe we're a little bit unique just because we run kind of a tight operation, but like there's a lot of things you can just plan for, like make sure like you've called the United Site Services and get the pump, the pumps and all that stuff. Those are just kind of nuts and bolts things that, I guess anyone can do. But the curation of the community, at least for our camp, I can't overstate how important that is, because it just takes one person to create so much work if it doesn't gel. And so Kate does the lion's share of this in terms of just like making sure that people that are being introduced by sponsors that they really are a good fit. And so, I don't know that would have really occurred to me in my first year as lead of Feed the Artists. Actually, it didn't. It was just kind of like you just assume that people self-select and it just kind of happens. But it actually it takes a lot of really conscious effort. And again, maybe we're not the cookie cutter camp in that sense, but for us, it's very asymmetric in terms of you can have 84 great people, but if you have one sort of squeaky wheel and squeaky in a bad way, it drains a lot of resources in terms of the TCO. So if you're a new TCO starting something, pick your campers carefully, I would say. And just to follow up, like we want everyone to be different, and everyone is different. Like we're a very, very diverse camp. But there's also this commonality, like if we don't pull together and do our mission, then we fail as a camp in a way, right? So it's something we have to be very deliberate about.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for re-emphasizing that. And I've definitely seen it happen. You have one person, Burning Man's for everyone. Everyone can be there. But if you're just not aligned, if you're just not about the same vibe, if everyone in camp goes to bed early, but one person wants to stay up and party all night, like just one like low hanging fruit example of how we can be misaligned. Yeah, maybe it's not the right fit. Mama Dynamite, what about you over in Solid City? Do you think there's anything that's being overlooked?
Oh, absolutely. And unfortunately so. I think one of the things that the org could also look at is just how, we always say that, it's not for everyone, but everyone is welcome. But you also have to look at what can also be felt as an unobtainable experience for so many. 85,000, 65,000 seems like a tremendous amount of people in the desert, if you will. But when you look at the complexities that's involved in that undertaking, some people can't even get a ticket. Ticket acquisition can be a challenge for some people. And also just how do you get, say, the East Coast or from another continent? How do you even get to Black Rock City? After driving 2 times, shipping U-boxes and all of this stuff, storage units, U-Haul nightmares, it's a logistics nightmare. Is it worth it? Absolutely. And I love the fact that how there's incentives for even taking a hiatus so that maybe some other people that don't get a chance to get a ticket, that they can experience, apply and see, how amazing it is and what the world could actually become if we all adopt, those wonderful 10 principles that were created, and even though we support, the radical self-reliance and the communal effort, I mean, I couldn't help but notice the train that was going by and to see the containers moving and shifting and just wondering if there were other ways that we could better pool and use our resources, be more efficient, more sustainable, more green, if we could work together to see how can we do that? Can we ship some containers on the train? Can we do this? Can we do that? Can we make it more economical in any way? Because since it is like a nonprofit, how can we make it so that it's open for more people to get involved, more participation, more collaboration, from challenges like, okay, how far apart are the burner bus stops? How far away is the ice? There's a lot of different things that it can be improved. Everything can be improved. We never get everything right the first time, but it is still a learning experience. And I just love being able to be part of the conversation and the dialogue to see where can we go from here? What else can we do? How do we keep it to be like a lifestyle is how I've adopted, and see, all that is involved in, becoming this whole city in the desert to literally, bringing it to life and then leaving no trace.
Yeah. Thank you. You're actually you're touching on my very last question for you all. And again, I'm from the education program. We focus on how to share the culture that emanates from Black Rock City, out into the world through, collaborative learning. And so I'm wondering, is there any education you think that the community could still use? We've touched on the 10 principles. This whole thing is about acculturation. I think, what do they say, about 40% of Black Rock City's population every year is there for the first time. Is there something you think the community could still use as far as learning about Burning Man or being a burner?
I think helping people to understand the big picture. And I think this isn't necessarily, because I feel like there's perhaps an org component to your question, and then there's like a TCO component of your question, at least in my head. So I think about, like, for me as a TCO, like, you all put out the information on how kind of all the pieces come together. And then as I work with new campers in particular, as well as existing campers, to Urian's point of people always needing refreshers and reminders, people don't know what they don't know. So I can't count the number of times I've been sharing information about, like, not just, you need to practice leave no trace, please stay for strike, but then pulling it together and saying, this is why leave no trace is important. This is why we stay for strike. Next year, this is how it ties into our placement. This is how it allows everyone in our broader community to come back to Playa. All of us working together and really getting that, just the light bulbs that come off and they can into people's eyes is huge. So I think finding more and more ways for people to really get that. And I feel like that's a partnership between TCO and orgs. Yeah, I think just letting people, I'll stop there. That's my initial thought.
No, thank you. Please, Urian, go ahead.
I'll just add, there's an old saying, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And I think the org does a really good job, level and placement. They've been just, wonderful to work with, and just all the way up the structure in terms of, communicating, like, this is what we're about, this is what you should know. And like Feed the Artist, like the stream of emails are all year round. But, the person reading the emails needs to be open to to receiving the message, and not everyone does, but sometimes people don't, and then they show up on the Playa and, like, they immerse and they get it. And so I think there's only so much you can do, but what can be done, I think the org does really well.
Awesome. Thank you. Yes, I will admit a professional curiosity about, is there more education that can be facilitated from Burning Man Project? But I also, hearing you say, like, and you've all been saying it really throughout, like, there is a lot the camp organizers can do to support, what newer burners are learning. But that has to be balanced with, like, the ongoing process that we've all committed to as individuals, as citizens of Black Rock City, as world citizens, right? That that the learning is on us, the incorporation is on us, to stay curious, to stay humble and open, to, even as newer burners, right? Read the newsletter, get get your stuff, start checking it out in February. Like, don't take anything for granted. I think the worst year I ever had was the year I kind of thought I was just going to phone it in. Didn't check out my bins, didn't like, I was like, I got it. I got it there. And like, I didn't have it. Y'all, I didn't have it, So that it's on us. It's on each of us individually, whether it's year 1 or year 21. Yeah, awesome. We have about a little less than 15 minutes for some Q&A. I don't know. I would love to reach out to our chat moderator, Callie. I haven't seen any questions come in. So to our attendees, do you have questions you would like to ask? An easy way to do this would actually be to just type the word hand into the chat, and then we will know that you have raised your hand and we can call on you if you would like to ask a question. And then we might invite you to unmute yourself and even come on camera so we can be face to face in this, strange Zoom world. Does anyone have any questions for our panelists from Solid City and Feed the Artists? All right. I think I see a hand. It is a great panel. Thanks, Meow Meow. Lakshmi, would you like to unmute yourself and come on camera to ask your question?
Hi, I'm a 8-time burner and I've been burning since 2008 with the Black Rock roller disco.
Woo!
Yeah, so fun. So I think I have two questions, if I may ask. One is the police presence that we saw in 2022. I didn't go in 23, but 2022 was shocking to me. And I also felt like the newer people in the camp didn't really understand that you don't go to the police to resolve any issues. You actually come to a camp leader or to veterans or things like that. How do you disseminate that information carefully? And then a second question would be, now there's kind of half veterans, half new people, and the veterans are wiser and older like myself, and the newer people are maybe younger and more hip. And so I felt like the camp became very divided. So how do you maybe encourage interaction between the age groups? Because I think that's something that's happening in our world too.
I could take that if on the first question, every day at camp, like we have family meals, we have brunch and dinner, and after that we feed people, we feed other people. But during the family meals, I get on the mic and we kind of go through announcements and we talk about composting, this and that, and we'll have conversations about who do you go to, and of course you have the camp leads, you have veteran campers, you have the rangers, you have the Leos. I mean, there's a lot of different places you can go. So those are conversations we have, before the playa, but also on the playa, almost on a daily basis. And in terms of the energy between veterans and newbies, again, maybe Feed the Artists is a little bit unique in that sense because we are working together in the kitchen, but we want to make sure we have enough veterans, not so much for any other reason than that we know how the operation works and that the ethos of why we do what we do and how we do it gets transcends down to the new member. So having the old guard, for lack of a better word, for us is very important, but having the new blood, obviously it's very exciting. I mean, you see that twinkle in people's eyes when they come to the playa for the first time. I mean, there's never going to be, that's always going to be a very special moment. So I think blending the two is important, and the culture just kind of vibes on its own that way.
Thank you. I really love you calling out having team, my first camp, everyone would go and scatter and do their own things. And if you didn't come back for dinner, you didn't come back for dinner, but we always had dinner at sundown. I was like, if you want to connect, you want to come together, having a meal together. And then let's make some announcements. Let's call out oh, by the way, this is the person for trash, or this is that. I love that. That's awesome. Mama Dynamite, do you have any advice from Solid City for this question?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we did a lot of meetings, a lot of prep, a lot of explaining, and then we also had like meetings when we got there, had a whole communication type, center set up with like a whiteboard and a binder of what to do and what not to do and how to make this work. But definitely explaining like the different roles and teams of security, and it's not a free for all, so just keeping everybody mindful of who to go to if they need help. Having a child in the camp definitely was like, okay, make sure you do this, make sure you don't do that. And, all the things to kind of maintain a level of safety, while we were there. Even if we were having an interactivity and you bring folks in, there were certain boundaries. Okay, well, this is just for the public and this is just for, Solid City. Doing things like that kept us in a really secure and safe way, so you don't have any unfortunate incidents, or, if you lose your bike, this is what you can do. And those kind of things is just important through conversation. And again, those meetings are very valuable before you get there, when you're there, and then even a wrap up afterwards.
Awesome. Thank you. We have 2 questions in the queue now. I think we might be able to get to both of them before we have to wrap up. So I'm going to go to the next question from the ambassador. What are some of the tools that you all use to effectively acculturate your community as camp members and as burners? So some specific tools. Kate, does Feed the Artist use any specific tools?
I think tools, I would consider the vetting call, or then that intro, I would honestly consider that a tool, having those clear conversations and making sure, again, not only that we're a good mutual fit, but like, have you ever heard of the 10 principles? Are you familiar with them? And then if the answer is no, that's okay. Let me send you this information. And then like sending people links to those sorts of things that the org often sends out as well. We, throughout the year leading up to Playa, I'll send more and more info like that out to people, try and target it so people aren't in email saturation mode, but just say like, hey, here's some info that you can get, here's expectations, here's where you might go for this. And I'll solicit questions from people as well and say like, what are you thinking about that I can include in an upcoming information announcement? Because again, like, I think as TCOs and just I think leadership across the world in general, like just because we know something doesn't mean someone else knows something. So it's helpful to hear from people like, what are you thinking about that I'm not telling you? Those implicit, things.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. And we also have a really fun WhatsApp group chat for the whole FDA family, and it will go in any direction you can think of, but that is a way to connect throughout the year, because we're all kind of family now, but that's kind of part of acculturation as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, communication tools really seem like the thing, right? Like, and I know that Burning Man Project puts out a ton of material and that can be a little overwhelming, but it sounds like just reinforcing all that. And like Mama Dynamite, you said whiteboard, binder. I like the internal versus external. Like, this is for Solid City. There can be information. This is for our peeps. There can be information for guests or for, as part of like what we do facing in, but like there is something here for the crew. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
We have one more question in the queue, and it feels really important. So I want to give a few minutes to it before we have to wrap up. The time has flown by. It's from Scout in Solid City. I think that Mama Dynamite might know Scout, but this is a really important question. Have you as a camp lead ever needed to address a racial microaggression or cultural insensitivity before, during, or after the burn? And if so, what did you do? And Scout shared that they have experienced this, and it motivated them to switch camps and then seek a new group to spend time with. So yeah, and whether you directly, or I'd imagine as camp leads, you're all doing a fair amount of mediation, right? Like I'm sure it comes up, the need to support campers through tough moments. So have you ever had to address racial microaggressions or cultural insensitivities, and how did you do it?
I would love to jump in with that answer, KJ. Unfortunately, I did experience that, like my very first burn. You can go to some camps and some of them you feel a little less welcome than others, and you wonder if that's something that happened or because of whatever reason. But if you don't get that warm, fuzzy feeling, we all know our antennas go up, and it's like, okay, well, do I stay and try to make it work, or do I, detour someplace else? So that actually, sprung in my interest in joining like the NPOCN, and like, what else can we do? And, it can be a very overwhelming environment, place, especially if you don't see enough people that look like you, it's just the nature of the beast. But being able to have like that neighborhood where we can, ride down block after block and not feel intimidated was a very welcoming and encouraging experience. From 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock, you can have a vast, levels of experiences. And the more positive you have, you want to generate and navigate toward that. So, first we learn to talk about it, communicate it, analyze it. Did that really happen? Were you misunderstood? Did you think it the wrong way, or that actually happened? So you try to process that, try to see, well, what can we do to negate that happening again? What are the tools that we have? And definitely I'm looking forward to the new downtown, the new center campus. I think is going to be a wealth. It's going to be like that whole like environment where we can just mix all different types of cultures and learn and experience all the greatness that Burning Man and Black Rock City really tries to achieve. So I think it can help to maybe, put some of that negative experience behind us so that we can all come out there and join, the wonderful opportunities that exist in Black Rock City. But I think we do have to acknowledge that it does happen. It does happen. It's in the default world, and it is and Black Burning Man too. But what tools do we have that we can kind of reduce that, if not get rid of it altogether?
I'd love to
Yeah.
add, I love that. And I'd love
Please.
to add, I'm seeing Yamia's commented there as well around misogyny. And I can say, I've personally experienced that as a burner as well as a camp lead. And I think just addressing it directly, having a conversation about it with the person, just being firm, knowing my role, and being really confident in myself when I'm the recipient of it, I will say. And then going to my fellow co-leads, say like, hey, this is coming up, let's please be aware, those sorts of things. I think in terms of the specific question that prompted this too around racial microaggressions, I haven't had those come up in camp that I've seen. I do know they've happened because a year later, someone told me about one that happened, and a person addressed it in the moment. And so it took a while for them to feel comfortable coming forward and sharing, which I understand. So I think just the more we can be aware, hopefully be welcoming, hopefully be open to hearing those sorts of things. I don't say anything that Mama Dynamite hasn't already said better. So yeah, because it does happen, 100%.
I'll just add just more on the cultural side. I guess this was back in 2019, but when we first started getting more international campers, I don't know that we were quite prepared for the cultural gaps that can exist. And, this is kind of, true for the culture in general, right? When you have a new group coming in, you want to assimilate them so that everyone is sort of, getting, not getting along, but that everyone feels part of. And so we learned from that experience that we do need to be multilingual and do stuff in Portuguese when we communicate, because otherwise that group kind of goes off on its own and they form like a group within a group. And obviously we want to have, one big happy family. So, but that speaks more to the cultural and kind of the language side of things.
Thank you. So I'm hearing that, there's personal effort we can do as individuals, as leaders, and also as individuals to just make sure people feel heard and to not gloss it over. Be like, hey, this does happen, and to meet it, with some courage and humility, and like to know that, it's our responsibility to witness it and to affirm it, that it's happening, in order to have people feel heard, feel safe, and then we could hopefully continue to build safe spaces. Oh, there's so much more. That's another hour and 15-minute subject right there. And it's not the panel, but but it's valuable and worthy. I just want to say thank you to all of you, to all of our panelists, Mama Dynamite, Kate, Urian, thank you. Behind the scenes, we have Siobhan producing our session. We've got Callie as the chat moderator and Vegas Queen as our tech moderator. Could not have done any of this without you. Thank you all for choosing to be here. We have a feedback form in the chat. If you want to grab that, we'd love to hear your direct feedback about our session. And then also we want to drop some links into the chat. In Burning Man Hive, we have an online learning network. There are several resources towards acculturating new burners. If you've got new folks on your crew this year, if they want to know where to start and what, here's some great resources for you. There's some other great links there as well around the multicultural POC neighborhood, the Jackrabbit Speaks, the First Timers Guide, Ticket and Ticket Aid, all this stuff. You all were giving each other great advice in the chat, which was the best use of it. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. It's 2:15. Got 15 minutes to your next session. Have a great afternoon. Thank you for what you do for Black Rock City, for our global community, in bringing people together and hosting them safely and happily in Black Rock City. So have a great day. Have a great weekend. Thanks for being here, and see you at Burning Man. Cool. Take care, y'all.